Ni två är ju det bästa som har hänt mig.
Bäst som har skjedd deg? Skulle vært der litt mer, da.
This is one of those films that the more you watch, the more enjoyable it becomes. The details makes more and more sense, the subtleties becomes clearer, the devils in the details starts to become more understandable. Sentimental Value is a movie worthy of attention, worthy of our silence while we observe the expressions of the characters, the words that are said, the way in which they are spoken, the ones which are not expressed. All that we see are details that tells more about the characters and their story, along with their perspectives of one of the main themes in the film, absence.
Well, he's very difficult person.
How many of us had to deal with not so easy to deal parents? How many of us had the unfortunate trauma of not having your mom or dad around anymore? Sometimes they come back, sometimes they don't. In the case of the Borg family, the father returns, but he does not have an easy redemption. Gustav Borg is a film director, but he is also the father of Nora, his oldest daughter and actress, and Agnes, an academic historian who played a character in one of her father's films, but didn't proceed in this career. At some point during the marriage of him, Gustav leaves the family, cultivating a last wound in his daughters, especially in Nora. An element that I would like to emphasize not only in this film, but in other Joaquin Trier films, is that families are not presented in black and white terms in his films. There's usually much more to unpack, with complex characters, dialogues that don't remain on the surface. There's always the discussion between the characters and what is really behind the discussion. In the case of Sentimental Value, we could have seen a Gustav who's absent in a much more simplistic way, only blaming the broken marriage for his departure and returning only to say, I'm sorry to his daughters. But we are invited to not only to understand the possible cause of his decision and way to deal with people, but his way of trying to make amends between his past and also his future. In a world which is becoming more and more individualized, people tend only to see their version of the story, only their pain, which in a way is understandable, but perhaps the curious also having at least a glimpse of what possibly motivated the other person to act in a certain way. To wear the skin of the one who got more hurt, we see Nora, played by the great Renate Reinsve, playing by the way another actress, an actress that does not only see this profession as a way to make a living, but also as a way to perhaps run from herself, not having to be her and become someone different. And why would she want to become someone else? Is she not satisfied with who she is? What we could infer is that the absence of Gustav during her childhood might have a saying on this. Imagine feeling loved by someone special, your parents, even a friend or a romantic partner, and all of a sudden they disappear. Don't talk to you no more, don't send any messages. How would you feel about it? Depending on your maturity, emotional security, and age, not only you will feel sad, but also confused in a way which, even without realizing, your mind starts blaming yourself, thinking that perhaps you were one of the reasons that made that person leave you. And there's the importance of transparent talks with people before important decisions. So that is my guess on why Nora feels that way about not having to be herself in the stage. And also, why she's also so good not only as an actress, but at playing complex and melancholic characters, at a very sad cost, a cost that practically anyone sees. At the time, not only she deals with the fact that her father left them without a justification, but also with the fact that he returned without a proper and clarifying talk, or at least that's the feeling that I have when I listen to their conversations. You can feel the tension between them, and the rage she carries every time she remembers him, sees him. Can that past also affect the way she approaches relationships? Maybe. If we consider the thought that she wants to be someone else, maybe it's because she thinks her real self is not enough or don't deserve real love. Therefore, it is better to engage in not so serious relationships or affairs that will not demand a much more raw, transparent, and honest intimacy. It's like she wants to have the power, the freedom to live before that power is given to the other person, giving that person the opportunity to do as her father did. Live without an explanation. Having to see her father somewhat means confronting the idea that perhaps she's not enough. Confronting if what she thinks about herself is true, or if her father really thinks negatively of her. But what is interesting about this story is that the confrontation won't be done only by her side, it will also be done by Gustav. He also made the thinking, reflected upon the matter. He recognizes in his own way the damages caused to him and by him, and in his own way, he's willing to fix it. Of course, the way he chooses to make it is harder. He could have just said, "I'm sorry, I cannot undo the past, but I'm willing to be better." But quite frankly, when I think more about the way that he decided to deal with, I realize that sometimes when a parent does a mistake similar to disappearing out of the blue and returning, because of their lack of emotional and psychological knowledge, they seek to make amends, but in their own hard way. I'm gonna give you a personal example. My dad is one of those dads that disappeared from their child's lives. There was no contact, and the other people of his family we tried to reach didn't even attend it to us. And it was this hell for almost a year. And that is, I guess, because it was so hard for me that my brain tried to erase it from my mind. His absence really had a high cost on myself, and he doesn't even have an idea about it, how hard it was for me. But he returned. He knows it wasn't fair, and even after returning, he didn't mind explaining me the reason. But he kept giving me things, like the opportunity to study English among other important elements. There's a part of me that thinks that him giving me things is also a way to say, "I'm sorry for leaving you," which in my case is not that simple, but something similar we see between Gustav, Nora, and Agnes. His attempt is made through his film, not through basic human interactions like, "I'm sorry I was a jerk." But again, this is because of his quite chaotic past. Through Nora, we are invited to reflect how a complicated parenting can make us complicated. And through Gustav, we are invited to also reflect on how complicated our parents' parents were complicated with them. Everything has a source, I suppose. Then, if both Nora and Agnes lived all this together, why Nora seemed to be more troubled than Agnes? The answer is heard by Agnes herself.
How did I?
Nora, by being the one who came first, started to go through hell first with her family, and probably alone, while Agnes somewhat got carried by Nora during the chaotic moments of their parents and also after the divorce. We could infer that Nora, knowing the pain she had lived through, tried to protect or reduce the damage on her younger sister. And that is quite beautiful. Painful and beautiful, because she didn't fully recover from the past, but still she was helping Agnes to become a brighter person with a more brighter and happier future. Agnes had someone to look up for during their hell. When both Rachel and Gustav decides not to move along with the movie, maybe it's because the story was written in such a personal way, being the unification of both mother and daughter with such a personalized pain that even a professional actress wouldn't be able to understand or would dare to portray such affliction. It would have to be done by someone who really understands that kind of damage, who came by it, who understands that native, painful language. That pain contains more damage than we could imagine. Like the house constantly showed in the movie, for some people it's just another beautiful house, like most houses we come by when we are walking in the streets. But that house has not only one, but multiple layers, multiple stories and generations, each one containing tragedies, some of them even lasting to the next generations, in a kind of pain that only the ones who lived it can understand such weight, such profundity, and therefore face empathy, forgiveness, and interior peace.